Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling. Matt Phillips.
Hey guys.
Matt and I are here to review an album that's been out for a little while now. But before we get to that, I want to get to something completely unrelated. I have to send a shout out to Josh at the Night Ranger Fans in Motion podcast for sending me this groovy little shirt. Fits really well. Obviously, it's the Night Ranger logo. It says Fans in Motion. For those of you that don't know, that's based on their '88 album Man in Motion. So if you're a fan of that band, check them out on Facebook and YouTube and all the regular stuff there. Very active community, and I want to send a shout out to Josh and all the folks on there. A lot of I've gotten a lot of follows from being on there. Very active community. So just want to say a shout out to those folks. And now for something completely different. I can't think of a single tie-in from Night Ranger to the band we're about to talk about. Greta Van Fleet. So, we've been into this band pretty much from the get-go. I won't say day one, but from the get-go. Just one of that handful of newer acts that have caught my ear and are just playing great traditional sounding rock and roll. And I think we've reviewed just about all of their releases at this point. So I guess we're a little bit behind on this one. We were trying to coordinate this so that Will could sit in because of the three of us, he's the biggest Greta Van Fleet fan by far. He's seen them. I don't know how many times he's seen them. He's going to see them again, isn't he? This is
yeah.
2023 is like the summer of Will going to concerts. So I'm all for it, man. Do it while you're young. That's awesome. But so Matt and I are going to do our best to represent this album. I'm interested that, Will make some comments on this, I'm sure, because Will brings the hot takes and we wouldn't want it any other way. So we're talking about the latest Greta Van Fleet album, Starcatcher. I just stuck the hype sticker in the corner. There's not a lot to this, right? There's not a lot to the artwork, right? But we'll get to the artwork and the packaging, I think, later on. So this is, I always get mixed up. This is their third full-length album. I always think it's like the fifth, but it's not, because the first was the EP Black Smoke Rising, and then From the Fires was that plus 4 more songs. I kind of consider that an album, but most people don't. And then, what came after that? Anthem of the Anthem of Peaceful Army, Battle of Gardens Gate, which it doesn't seem like very long ago. So they're active. They're putting out new music, which is great. Let's have it. So Matt and I want to go through this track by track and just give you our thoughts on the album. So start off, Matt. I'll get your take on track 1, Fate of the Faithful. Fate of the Faithful.
So Fate of the Faithful, I did want to give a tiny bit of detail on how this album was put together. The band had mentioned they wanted to go for more of a live feel on this record. I actually feel that now when I go back. I went back and listened to Anthem of the Peaceful Army. I've been listening to this one. We've had this for a month. So it's had time to percolate in my brain, and I've listened to it quite often. But so Fate of the Faithful, to me, it kind of feels like we picked up the needle from the Battle at the Gardens Gate, and then dropped it onto another side, and it just kind of continued. Although this album does have more of a live feel, and I feel that right away on Fate of the Faithful. It's got that really cool piano intro.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a piano or like a Hammond organ kind of sound. But right away I'm feeling like this album to me has kind of a rumble to it. When you're at like a live concert and there's always some kind of bass that you're feeling. And that's what I feel like they've kind of captured on this record. It's not specifically like the actual bass notes, but just that feeling of the rumble always being there. And I really like the whatever sound they went for with producer Dave Comm. I really like the sound of this album. Fate of the Faithful has this really cool piano intro, and I like the guitar part at about 3:19 in. There's tons of guitar solos on every Greta Van Fleet song, and Josh kind of sings some of the guitar licks, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I had written down. I like the electric. I think it's an electric piano, maybe, and it might be running through like a Leslie cabinet, so it gets that sort of where it breaks up, but you want it to break up. It's on purpose. And I like the little bendy guitar lick in it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Yeah, um, yeah, good opener. I mean, track two. And by the way, the tracks are all listed here in Roman numerals. Waited all your life. What are your thoughts on this one?
Now, Waited All Your Life starts off with more of an acoustic intro, and it's really kind of the piano and acoustic driving the song. I kind of thought, so after a few listens, this is where I really realized that the songs are more, it's not so much about distinctive riffs, but it's really concentrating on Josh's vocal melodies. There are some songs that have some cool riffs, but I wouldn't call this like a riff-based album. And there are some really cool, pretty bass licks buried in the mix here. So it does have that live feel where like the bass is not super, the notes are not super prominent. Um, and it has one of my favorite parts actually on the album. It ends with this beautiful "Please stay, don't go away" kind of bit at the end that Josh sings. So yeah, I really like this tune.
I wrote down that it's got a pretty similar tempo to the opener, and but I do like it, and I like the little stop and start in the chorus.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get to Josh's vocals here. I've got some notes about that too. Third track is "The Falling Sky."
Yeah. So, something I'm also noticing, it kind of feels like this album is a sort of concept album. I know we've talked about this on some other records before. We had the Metallica record earlier in the year, the 72 season had kind of a theme going through it. I don't know if you call it like a true concept album with an actual story. This one to me feels like there's a story behind all of these songs. Um, it's kind of like I don't know if you'd call it like a hero's journey, but definitely like a beginning where things are starting out, and then the hero eventually either dies or passes on to another plane near the end of the record. But okay, so Falling Sky, track three. This is when we're kind of into Riff Town on the album. This one gave me kind of like a When the Curtains Fall feel from their first kind of full studio album. And then there's this really cool build about 2 minutes into this really cool harmonica solo. So I'm not super familiar with the harmonica. I mean, I assume there's not a lot of notes that you can play on depending on what key or harmonica in. So it sounds like a harmonica solo from Days Gone Past. I don't want to compare it to a specific band or whatever, but that's what it kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, I like how we're hitting upon some similar things. The first thing I wrote about this song was great
Mhm.
riff in this song. It's a little faster tempo than the first two tracks, and yeah, harmonica solo. And bands will do that once in a while, and it's when it's done sparingly, it is a little bit of not a respite from a guitar solo, but it takes your ear in a different place because you're not expecting it. You're expecting electric guitar solo to come in, but when you hear the harmonica start up, then yeah, yeah. I've had harmonic. I've played a harmonica. I think that you'll have to get them. Well, this one's in C or this one's in A or so, and then there might be some that aren't tuned to a particular. I don't know, but I know there's a lot more to it than just breathing in and out.
Yeah.
to really play it right. All right, track four, "Sacred the Thread."
Yeah, slightly longer song this time, about 5.5 minutes. And I think if anyone's going to point to um, elements on this album that kind of sound like stuff that we like, you might kind of this one has a Bonham-esque kind of drum intro to it. It's got that really reverby, echoey kind of sound to the drums. So, and it's got some really pretty bass licks at about 3 minutes. There's this really cool breakdown is my kind of favorite part of the song, and then it ends with some piano plucking and orchestration. So this is kind of when I figured out. Um, so the packaging doesn't actually come with the lyrics. So you kind of
Yeah,
have to find and find the lyrics, or maybe you can find them if you've downloaded the album on your iPhone. But yeah, there's Tim showing the actual
yeah.
inside of.
It's yeah, I've got thoughts about this. Yeah.
So I
I've got thoughts
yeah.
about this.
So it wasn't. So I'd already listened to the album quite a few times before I sat down and actually, okay, I'm gonna find this link that it's printed like in really small print on the back of the, for song credits go to, and then this kind of truncated looking link that you have to go to, and it opens up a web page, and it's got like the dunes kind of background theme that they're going with. And so I wanted to read through these lyrics, and it does seem to progress in some kind of story. I haven't figured out if it's like an allegory for like if it's. It seems to me like it's talking about music as like the thing instead of like being like specifically talking about a hero. And with some of the lyrics, I've seen it in the start to dress up a wound and heal a scar. I've caught the wind in a kite of dreams and a flight of dreams. So that's Sacred the Thread. And then we'll talk about some of the other lyrics as we go on. But what did you
So yeah, for this one, Matt, I had written down daring comparisons to Led Zeppelin because
uh,
from
yep.
the beginning, from the beginning, it was like, oh, they sound just like Led Zeppelin one, when they first came out, and they did. I mean, it was very much like early Led Zeppelin in all ways. But this one with the echoed drums, I mean, it's when the levee breaks, basically, or an homage.
Yep.
The difference here is there's echoed voice and drums. And it's an epic song. That's yeah, it is a little bit longer too. That's all I had written down for this.
Okay.
Runway Blues, track 5.
Yeah, so 10-song album, and we're technically kind of right in the middle of the album. And then out of nowhere we have this 1 minute 17 seconds, and it just comes in and it's like, all right, here we go. Here's the rock song of the album. And it only lasts for a minute or so and then it's gone, kind of like a little teaser. There's only a few lyrics to it. It talks about touching down in San Francisco, bound for New York City. I'd love to say a long goodbye, but I don't know that I have the time. And it's just the song's done.
Yeah, it's funny. The lyrics are a little bit more literal on this one.
Yeah.
I had a few notes down. I wish this song was longer. I like it when they go into the higher tempos. They don't do it a lot. That's one of the things that I wish they had just a few more. I'm not talking about thrash. Just a few more higher tempo songs, like up and at 'em. And because it's like a truncated song, it immediately made me think of Van Halen's "One Foot Out the Door," the last song on Fair Warning, because it's a very, very short song. I always wished it was longer. It's basically a verse, chorus, guitar solo, fades out. Yeah, that's I really like this one, and you know, look, I wasn't in the studio, but it would have been kind of cool if they'd have faded this out and then maybe brought it back a few tracks later, and they could have done something with that. But who knows? Maybe they'll continue this on the next album. I don't know. And that brings us to track 6, "The Indigo Streak."
Yeah, so the Indigo Streak, it's the most recent video that the band posted. So they're continuing on to what they did with the Battle at Garden's Gate. They post live videos of them performing each song. So this is the most recent one that they've posted. It's getting quite a few views for it. I find Jake is really holding it down with the bass licks on the Indigo Streak, and especially at 248, it's got that really super distorted bass groan, and then it's followed by like a really slick little guitar solo. So that's what stood out to me on the Indigo Streak.
I had "Cool Riff" again. Might be my favorite riff on the album. I don't know about favorite song, but it might be my favorite riff. And I wrote this down. I like the fact that it's obvious to me that they think about their song titles. Like, they're very deliberate with their song titles. And in some cases, I think that they subscribe to the whatever you'd call it, the method of using the song title. Martin Popoff's talked about this with a lot of Robert Plant's lyrics, how he uses the song title to sort of write more lyrics, even, because sometimes you'll have a lyric that doesn't really appear, or a title that doesn't really appear in the lyrics.
Okay.
And they don't do that all the time, but that's basically, there's thought put into their titles. They're not 1-2 word titles, and they're not titles that you've seen a million times either, which I admire that.
Yeah.
So next up, track 7 is Frozen Light.
Yep. We're continuing on with this story. In the lyrics, I know that I'm not alone. I know the frozen light will take me there. So if this is the hero or the author themselves talking about this journey that they're taking, frozen light kind of starts off with. I don't find that their drummer Danny gets enough credit often, and he's counting them in 1, 2, 3, 4. Frozen light. This one to me had another kind of riffy, like it sort of sounds like the Falling Sky kind of riff style. And again, I'm always going into I really like the bass sound on this album. And at 3:30, this one gets really heavy, almost fills up the whole audio spectrum, and the vocals get really echoey. So it's kind of like that, like a 70s sounding thing. And then suddenly the song just really ends. Like it's a really quick, sudden ending to Frozen Light.
The only thing I had written down for this is that this might be one of my favorites on the album. I really, really like this one.
Okay.
For all of the reasons you mentioned and more.
Yep.
Another cool one, track 8, The Archer.
Okay, so this one's exactly 5 minutes long, and there's a part in this we talked about where Josh is singing "Torn, I turn to my bow, Sarah," and I thought he was saying, just with his, I don't know, his accent or whatever, I thought he was saying Sauron, like
Ah,
Sauron the rings. Torn, I turn to my arrow. Torn, I turn to my bow. Sauron, but he's saying Sarah. So there is a character that he's referenced here. To me, this is the part. So we're at track 8 of 10, and this is kind of the end of the hero's mortal life in the story. Um, everything I find everything on this song specifically sounds like it's when they say it's in the red. Like the guitar is really cranked, the bass is cranked, the drums, like the vocals, everything's like woo.
and yeah.
Yeah. And then the last 10 seconds of the song, it has this kind of 70s sequencer, wow, 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 wow kind of thing that's, and what I thought maybe if this was fitting into a concept of the album, um, so the heroes passing and this wow wow kind of feels like they're being transported maybe to another dimension, another plane or something, but that's what I got from The Archer.
Yeah, it's funny because I was listening to the lyrics and I thought, well, is he saying Sarah, or am I just hearing that because my wife's name is Sarah and I'm my, but it's funny because the Battle for Garden's Gate, that made me think, I've long, that gave me a total Lord of the Rings, vibe. And, The Archer, oh, well, maybe it's about Legolas, uh, could very easily, although when we get into the packaging, there's another franchise which we could probably link this to as well. I wrote down it's got a bit of an Eastern feel to it in places like Zeppelin would do sometimes, or and it's anthemic. It's very anthemic. A lot of their songs are anthemic. So yeah,
Yeah.
that takes us to the penultimate track, number 9, Meeting the Master.
Okay. So Meeting the Master, first taste we got of this album. They did an actual proper video to it. Go check out the video. It's absolutely gorgeous, but it does make you feel like that kind of Lord of the Ringsy fairy tale kind of and even has, if you remember from the Lord of the Rings, when Peter Jackson filmed that, in some of the more dramatic scenes, it would be, he would do like a slow motion thing. It kind of, it's like, say one of the heroes was dying, he kind of felt like he was passing out. They do that kind of effect in the video too. So I wrote on this one, Meeting the Master, it feels like the hero is passed on to another plane. It starts out with that really gorgeous acoustic guitar, kind of like, would you call it like a kind of lick? And You know, Josh is singing, I have known no other master. He has been the only one. And then, so it starts off kind of acousticy and beautiful. And then at 2:36, Danny's drum in, and then the song goes into like another gear. What did you think of Meeting the Master?
Well, I wrote down, yeah, it's acoustic, which I think is the first really fully acoustic driven thing you hear on here. And in general, I think that Josh is, because these are still young guys in this band. Josh is learning to control that big voice of his. It sounds very much like, all of the previous music they put out. It just sounds like he's learning to control it and use his instrument. And this is just, for some reason, I just felt like he had like such control over this. I felt the same way about the opening track too, Fate of the Faithful. But yeah, this is definitely a passing on type of thing. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan like we are, you're thinking maybe the Grey Havens. They've accomplished their earthly mission. Now it's time to rest. Whether or not that's the intent, I don't know. But yeah, that's you can feel the album and the story really winding down at this point.
Yeah, there was a little bit of to me. So the lyric goes, "What a day to meet the master, waiting for so long. Final day to meet the master, my time to go home. Um, and I'm taken by the madness and the tripping and the touching. What a day to travel faster, to take my trip around the sun." So you can feel like there's an ending to that. But then there's this line right near the end of the song. It goes, I blow it up to give him all love. And then Josh kind of ends the song with that really softly, all love, all love. Really beautiful part, but kind of a thing that confused me a little bit on here. Is this a positive thing or?
Yeah. Huh. Well, and then it all wraps up with the aptly titled final track on the album, Farewell for Now.
Yeah, this is just like a mid-tempo kind of sign off to the record. And I wish we all could stay, but I bid you farewell. And it means the world to play, but I bid you farewell. So, it's a mid-tempo song, but then, of course, at about 2 minutes and 50 seconds, we have another I wrote absolutely explosive solo on this song. And the last 30 seconds, I mean, I hate to say this, but it kind of, with the light cymbal crashes, kind of remind me of a little bit of like a Led Zeppelin sort of thing. And it ends kind of romantically. You hear Josh sing, gathered here tonight, did it up just right, and it's all for you. Thought which was kind of like a little romantic ending to the record.
Yeah, it almost picks up where Meeting the Master leaves off. It's almost like a second half of it, I find, with some chord variations in it. But yeah, there are explosive parts to it for sure. And so ends Starcatcher, and so now I want to talk about the packaging. So neither of us got the vinyl, I don't think. We just got the I'm going to say it, the crappy little digipack that they sent us. This is one of the things I hate so much about digipacks. No matter how well you take care of your CDs, inevitably they end up doing womp 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 womp. They end up doing this, and it just and sometimes my ZZ Top La Futura,
Okay, yeah.
the CD will roll right out of it if you're not careful, right? So I mean, they continue to the design. It's very minimalistic, right? Not like Battle for Garden's Gate. Now, the booklet's very expansive, but this leads to, you already mentioned, there are no lyrics or credits in this. And I have a real big problem with that. It's like, I bought your album, everything that you want us to know about this album, which includes the lyrics, which includes the credits, which includes where it was recorded and all that. It should be here. Yeah. And it's not like there's not room in these photos to mix in the lyrics and credits. So I don't think you should have to do anything extra once you've bought it. Now, we talked about Lord of the Rings a lot, but you also mentioned at one point Dune.
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting. And I thought, yeah, I can see that as well, which is funny because, that in recent years, that franchise has had a reboot, a big reboot.
Yeah.
So,
At one point, we really only had just the artwork of the album. It looks really stark, and it
yeah,
kind of looks. If you first look, like it looks like a white tablecloth. Like, what is this? And then I kind
yeah.
of Photoshop and played with some of the colors. And I'm like, oh, that's the sand dunes. It's
Oh,
just not yellow. It's they've turned it down, taken the saturation out of it, and you see all the sand dunes inside the booklet, but that's just the texture of the sand dunes.
yeah.
They went with this. The only thing I can think of, so if you look at Tim actually has even more of these, but if you look at their discography so far, it's pretty black. Like
Yeah.
they've but everything's black, 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 black. And then you've got this one that really stands out. I assuming that's kind of the reason they went with something completely different.
Yeah, could be. And it's interesting, like, the title is bigger than the name of the band. But I
Yeah.
also like at the end of the song titles, it almost looks like they signed it.
Yeah.
There's a signature
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
sincerely, Greta Van Fleet.
Yeah. I looked really closely at it. It doesn't appear to be like a typewritten font. It looks like, like I'm looking at all the E look a little different. So it's like
The
somebody's
A's, yeah, the A's are weird. The A's don't have the bar or whatever
yeah.
you, um, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, and it's it's raised. The letters are raised. It's textured.
I don't love obviously don't love the album. Not very exciting. I don't know if it's gonna pop for them. I do know that you can buy a special version of the album. I think just on their web store for now that this is the actual cover. And they've put, Starcatcher Greta Van Fleet. And it comes in a package like a box and you open it and inside is a puzzle, I think, of the same of this image. So I thought that was kind of neat. If I ever found that for an inexpensive price, I'd check it out. But
Yeah, that definitely makes a better cover.
yeah,
But
it
yeah,
it doesn't. I don't feel like I don't. I mean, it doesn't feel like an album about fighting or standing up to anything to me. So I'm not. Sword kind of says it, but it is a more interesting image than just like the tablecloth kind of look. So.
yeah. I mean, those are minor quibbles. I would rather be able to, critique the artwork than say, well, the songs aren't that great. Songs are great. They've been, I think they've been very consistent, and I think you can hear their sound developing maybe subtly, album per album, but also the fact that they're very consistent, and we're not having these long waits between albums. So it hasn't been that long since they wrote the last batch of songs, but there is a progression. I'm noticing a progression with their sound. So and I'm interested to see where they go. I hope, like you said, I hope this album does well for them. I hope these guys have a long career because I think that they've got a lot of music in them.
Yeah. And I do plan on getting this on vinyl at some point. Ironically, I don't want to stretch this out too long. I have kind of a running joke here about Sunrise Records here in Canada. They're the largest independent, music in Canada, 80 plus stores. So when I show up to Sunrise to see if they have the new albums, any band, it's a toss up whether they're even going to be unpacked. And this day I showed up on July 21st when this came out. Of course, it hadn't been unpackaged. It was still in boxes. I showed up right at 9 o'clock when they opened, and he was nice enough to go through and dig out the CD for me. And I asked him, do you have the, because I knew that they were getting a limited edition kind of indie records. It's all about variants now, right? When
Yeah.
can't just put out a black vinyl now. It's like your orange vinyl, your red vinyl, your variant, all your different variants. So I asked him about it, and he's like, "No, we didn't get any of those." As it turned out, that is what they got. They got all the indie variants, and I didn't know it at the time. So I walked away empty-handed.
A couple things. Yeah, the first thing is that we do support Sunrise Records. Absolutely, I bought a lot of stuff there. It's the closest thing I've got to a local record store, and I remember when basically you had Walmart. That was your only source for new music, right? But yeah, it does seem to be a running gag that, you know, they're constantly not there. Either the stuff's not there or it's not out. And, but, you know, everybody's been cool. You know, it's not personal. It's just as music purchasers, music connoisseurs, you can't help but notice these things. And the desire to want to support local and not just buy stuff online. But getting to the variance thing, it's trying to sell the same album to the same people again to boost up those sales numbers, because you know, record sales are so dismal. They're getting better, but they're still dismal. Let's face it. There's not a lot of gold and platinum certifications these days, so they're hoping somebody out there will buy. You know, one fan buys 6 different versions of the same album. Well, there's 6 sales instead of 1 or 2. So, but for now, I've just got the crappy, you know, womp womp, this little puppet thing here. But anyway, there you go. That's our 2 cents. Wondering what you guys out there think. I know we get some Greta Van Fleet fans out there. I know Will's the biggest of them all that we know personally. And as far as I know, I think he's quite pleased with this from our conversations. You know, Will place things close to the vest sometimes. It's hard to tell if he likes something or not. And then he'll come up with something, be like, oh, okay, I wasn't sure what you thought of it. So, but I don't think Greta Van Fleet have disappointed him yet. So we'll see. I'm sure he'll have something to say about this. And we welcome everybody's input on this. So there you go. Starcatcher, Greta Van Fleet, go out and get it. However you can find it, go out and get it. It's worth listening to. I want to thank Matt once again for sitting in with me. And don't forget, tpublic.com for all of your DVC merchandise needs. The thing I've got closest to me right now is a coffee mug, but that's just the beginning of the designs and what you can do with it. So, you know, Matt and I brainstorm a lot on adding new designs to the mix. So we do have some different ones in there. So check it out. And we really appreciate everybody that's purchased.
Incidentally, if you have an idea, there's something that you'd like to see, let's get some discussion going.
Yeah. If you say, hey, you know, can you do up something like the Starcatcher album? We'll be like, well, we could, but why would you want that? Anyway, so there you go. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions. We will talk to you later.